Badger fans, what is going on? We got somebody from the other side, South Dakota reporter. We're going to have him come on, talk a little bit about their team, this matchup, what he expects to see, and the strengths of his team, and why one of those strengths may kind of like tie directly into one of Wisconsin's weaknesses. We're going to talk about it next. Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers, part of the Locked On.
Let's see if our intro is playing. Hold on. This is live. This is the beauty of live podcasting here. I don't know if my intro is playing or not. That's it. Let's just get right into it then. We got Jake Conover coming on. Jake from Back the Pack podcast, covers South Dakota. Really excited to have you on, man. Very excited for this game. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. All new customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Jake, we talked a little bit already. We kind of did a bit on your show.
Yep.
Introduce South Dakota, introduce the offense. What's the strength and the identity of this offensive team?
Yeah, so we can just definitely jump right into that. So I'm really excited about this game. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. It gives us a real good litmus test right away to start the season against a really quality opponent in the Badgers. With the offense, it's been kind of we went through and had a huge rebuild last season. Really the key starter on this is going to be Aiden Bauman, transfer from Iowa State. Didn't see any time there, but he was 4-star out of high school that coaches were very high on going into it. And he actually had a little back and forth with our previous starter in the season before, where we ended up going 3-8 in there. And then our actual previous starter transferred out and we handed him the keys to it, and he has taken off and ran with it. Last season, he led the Coyotes to a record of 10-3, got us back into the playoffs, which I would tell you what, FCS does playoffs so much better than FBS. We put 24 teams in there and let them all fight it out. Right. But even got our first win in the Dome as well to start the season. Unfortunately, fell short to rivals up north in North Dakota State. But him and actually a guy that's really excited to get back home in Jack Martins as a wide receiver, him and Carter Bell, those two are really ready to go to work for out in the Wisconsin game.
Talk to me about the running game, because that's something that last year was a big part of what you did. Week 1 against Northern State, y'all ran for 266 yards. Really quick, side note, I talked about this before with you. Week 1, South Dakota played the Northern State Wolves. Yep. That is the most generic team name I've ever heard of. Where is that? Northern State Wolves?
Yeah, so funny enough, that is actually about 3.5 hours north of Vermilion, where the Coyotes play in Aberdeen, South Dakota. It's a D2 school, and you are right. It does feel very generic. Doesn't even include the state that they're in. So it's definitely interesting on that. Just one favor, don't look at the passing stats from that last game.
Bring them up because South Dakota ran for week 1, dominant victory. Listen, you guys, they gave up the first 3 points of the game and then basically just mauled them. Ran for 266 yards, threw for 85. Is that indicative of the type of offense South Dakota wants to run?
Not at all. So I actually watched this game pretty closely, and we ran very few passing concepts out of this. Honestly, this was our FBS versus FCS kind of game. It was that tune-up game to start the season. I'll be honest, if it wasn't the first game of the year, Northern State probably wouldn't even scored that 3. Our safety had a crash down attempt on a tackle. It's his first attempt at a tackle of the season, and he whiffed. Happens. Russ is there. He didn't get to tackle much in the fall camp. So, yeah, with that, it would have been different. But I will say, offensively, it is very balanced. It's very prototypical kind of offense. Aiden will hit it really hard on the play actions on you guys, but where our strength is probably going to be the O-line. We return everybody but one from last year's 10-3 team, so we're really excited about what they can do. And we even had a young gun jump up and take the starting role from a starter from last year too. So we're excited about what the depth has on that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I read just reading up on this South Dakota team. You look at the size for the offensive line, because that's usually one of the big discrepancies, right? When you go FCS to FBS, but across the board, y'all are 6'7", 310, 6'8", 325, 6'4", 325, 6'5", 315. Like that's an FBS sized offensive line.
We've put a major focus and building up some dudes on there. The nice part is we got a lot of age on there too, which helps. We're bringing in guys that do flirt with about that 300-pound mark. I did notice in the last recruiting phase. So they're definitely focusing around that 6'5" and up, and trying to get to that 300 to 315 very easily with them. But they really do focus on them to lead our three-headed running back charge out there.
Well, talk about that group. Obviously, a couple of guys I wanted to mention: Charles Pierre, Travis. Is it Thies or Thies?
Tice.
Yep,
it's interesting name.
Or neither. Yeah, talk to me about the running backs, because Wisconsin's coming off a week 1 game where Western Michigan had some success on the ground.
Yep. Yeah, you got some Coyote fans pretty excited after watching that Western Michigan game and seeing some success for the running backs that they had, because a lot of us did feel after watching the game that USC might have a better backfield even than what Western Michigan had to offer. But the running back room all comes down to Travis Tice. He is a senior, reigning Missouri Valley fullback, first team on that. So we're really excited about him. But what he offers more than anything is that leadership role. Being here for 5 years now, he's really taken on that mentality. He is part of that rebuild to take us from 3-8 to 10-3. But then, the one that I'm really excited to watch as his role expands is Charles Pierre Jr. He, at one point, I think I told you, he was averaging about 12 yards a carry against Northern State. He could do whatever he wanted. And we didn't even really get a chance to release LJ Phillips against them. There was really no point in it. Kept things pretty easy on those, hit our plays that we needed to. So he got to stay in the stables a little bit, but I'm excited to see what he can do as well.
Really quick, we had a couple people in the comments here. Bo Dragon says Wisconsin's going to blow South Dakota off the field. Thoughts on Bo Dragon's optimism here?
I get it. I grew up an FBS fan. I grew up an Iowa State fan. It was always exciting to watch. The UNI's, UND that came in last week for them. It was always a game that everybody was like, okay, here's just your touch-up test. We get to hit somebody that isn't our own players. But with this, I do think one thing to really put a focus on is what USC can do on the offensive abilities to extend the drive out with runs where they'll get 3 yards, 4 yards, first down. We're going to keep rolling on you. And we get, like I said, that 3-headed monster on the running backs. And then we have the ability to sub out pretty much our entire O-line. I can see that being an opportunity to drag that game out and keep it a low scoring game. So the blowout, it becomes more difficult then.
Yeah. And that's really interesting, man, because that's kind of what, and you and I talked about this already previously. That's kind of what Western Michigan did. I mean, not with 3 running backs as much, but with 2. But the idea was long drives. Let's run the ball. Let's shorten the game. Let's keep it close. And it was 14-13 in the third quarter. So that's kind of the same game script. I want to talk a little bit about the quarterback again, Aiden Bowman, and more specifically, because I'm sure a lot of Wisconsin fans don't watch much South Dakota football. What kind of offensive scheme are you running? Is it out of the shotgun? Is it air raid? Is it spread? Is it power? How would you do it?
It is kind of a power pro-typical kind of offensive style on there. We will, in random spots, get into a very spread out setup, but he is very focused on staying within the pocket on there. He does have the mobility capabilities to extend the play. I would not consider him a running threat where he's going to get outside the pocket, run for 15, 20 yards. But if he has an opening, he'll go get 5 yards. I mean, he is 6'5", 245. So he's definitely willing to stand in there, take a hit if he needs to deliver a proper ball. One thing that will surprise fans, it doesn't happen often, but we got a lefty as a quarterback. So it's always interesting to see how defenses scheme against that, considering our right tackle is our best, tackle on the O-line compared to most people putting their left tackle over there.
Here's a question for you from Stephen Keel. Do you think you're going to load? Do you think defensively, SDU is going to load the box and make Wisconsin beat you through the air? Wisconsin definitely leaned on the run game last week. Actually, before we even get to that, let's put a mark on this. This is my fault. Let's talk defense in general. And then we'll get into the specifics of Steven's question. South Dakota on defense. What are your thoughts?
So it is actually really interesting going into this year because that's where our holes opened up at and seeing what's going to happen this year. We had some major losses in Miles Harden, probably the best cornerback in USC history. He's over on the Browns right now, and he actually made the roster for them. And then we also lost 2 stud linebackers in Brock Mogensen and Stephen Hillis. Stephen Hillis was on, I think if I remember correctly, he's on the practice squad for the Bills, and then Brock Mogensen is actually on the practice squad for the Cowboys now. So that is a part where we have some question marks, and the coaches really hit the transfer portal hard to fill those in. 2 guys that they're really excited about on the linebacker side is going to be Nate Ewell. He actually ended up starting the game, but he transferred in from Grandview, if I remember correctly, D3 school. And then we also have Wade Abrams, who transferred in from Valparaiso to help fill in those spots on the linebacker. But they also were really excited about the depth that they're bringing this year for linebacker. On the cornerback side, we're really excited about, his name's Mike Reeds. We got a transfer in from Monmouth to fill in for Miles Harden. We are kind of reeling right now. We're trying to see when Shahid Barrows comes back. He, in the Sacramento State game, actually went up for a pick and got his knee hit weird. It was just a freak play, and we haven't seen him since. So it's not one that I'm going to bug anybody on. Just hoping he gets back on the field sometime soon.
Does South Dakota have the size up front to just hold up in the trenches for 60 minutes against a bigger Wisconsin team?
The starting spots definitely do. It's the question mark of where the depth is. We put a lot of focus into gaining some guys on the D-line. One guy that they're really excited about that they've been developing, his name's Marquise Grace. He's 6'4", 260. In high school, he played running back, and then he found a growth spurt, and he was put in D once he got to USD. And it was really fun to watch him actually last game against Northern State, because what they did, they shifted the line a lot. And one thing they did was pulled him to middle linebacker mid pre-snap. And it was interesting to watch his development there, because he has the speed coming back from the running back area. He knows how to handle that kind of speed and get out on maybe some tight ends or some running backs going out in the flat.
Now let's get into Steven's question. Like, do you see USD kind of loading the box and just saying, we're going to stop the run, beat us through the air if you can?
You know, I do think so. They do trust Mike Reed quite a bit. And then also Roman Tillman, the other corner, to go out there and get on an island on that. So I do think they're going to stack the box. But, you know, when it comes to what Wisconsin's typically known for, it's power football. You guys are good at filling in the box and pushing a push with the O-line. So I think they're going to be ready for that opportunity. And I could see you guys trying to want to drag out the game or keep it simple on your plays calling like you did for Western Michigan. So I'm curious on what that will look like with them.
Yeah, Badger fans were super stoked about the simple play calling against Western Michigan. That was a really appreciated aspect of that game.
Yeah.
Interesting that you hit on that. I know you watched some of that game. Let me ask you this. USD ranked, I think it was 6 in the FCS rankings in the country. 6 in the FCS, comes off a great season last year, has a veteran offensive line, absolutely destroyed, again, I can't even say it without laughing, Northern State in week 1. It feels like a made-up school. But my point is there a bit of a quiet confidence about this program heading into Madison based on what you did last year, maybe based a little bit on what you saw week 1 from both your side and from the Badgers?
Yeah, I think there is some confidence in this. One thing that actually I'm really excited about is to get Coach Hodge back to Wisconsin. So for your Badger fans that are true fanatics, they might recognize that name because he did play linebacker for Wisconsin for a little bit before transferring back down to UNI, but he did get some starting reps on there. So I'm excited to see what he can do with his room with a bunch of new names on there. But as a whole, I do think there's some confidence. You know, most teams, you break it down, they're going to focus on winning their conference first. Everything I've seen during practice is we're going to go win a national championship. They don't talk about the conference. We're going to go win the championship. So I do think they have some swagger, and they felt good about how they competed against Missouri last season. And with the ability to return most of that team, they're feeling pretty good about their chances going into Wisconsin as well.
Robert Sorensen says, thanks for coming on the show, Jake. Always appreciate a different perspective. I copy that. Agreed. Adam Loreski says, how will USD travel as a fan base? Think there will be a good number of you guys coming out to Madison?
Last I heard, we did sell out the fan allotment that Wisconsin sent our way, and I know there's a lot more sneaking in there. Really, it's not too bad of a drive from Sioux Falls, where I'd say a majority of our South Dakota fan bases are. are going to be traveling from. So that's directly across the bottom of Minnesota, right over to you guys. So not too far at all. I think you're going to be surprised at the turnout.
Give me the game script. If with USD keeps this close or wins it, how do they do it? What do they need to do?
I think the big thing is seeing multiple drives that flirt with that 12 to 17 plays. Honestly, they have to play Big Ten football. It's probably the easiest way to say it. Get 3 to 4 yards on a carry, hit a good post route for another 7, and just kind of keep that drive going. The easiest way to win is to keep the other team's offense off the field, and that's what I think they'll focus on trying to do.
Yeah, I think the longer you keep it close, right, the better it starts to feel. If this game early in the first quarter, if Wisconsin jumps out 10-0, if it's 13-3 beginning the second, if Wisconsin has a quick start here, does it go off the rails a little bit for USD?
That's probably, like I said, the biggest red flag for USD is their ability to regain momentum going into the season. I'm not sure what they've done to really focus on that. Getting blown out by both your rivals, one being the reigning national champ, and then the other happening on your home field in the playoffs. Definitely seemed to let things slip when one thing went bad. So if they can maintain the ability to keep the momentum close where nobody's feeling like, okay, we got this, or swinging the other way, it will be interesting, but it's all comes down to momentum for USD, in my opinion.
All right, let's end up here. We did this kind of on your show as well. Let's do a quick prediction of what you think will happen. This is a friendly group of people you're listening to, so don't be intimidated. But what's your game prediction here?
I'm gonna stand on it. I called this prediction early in the offseason last year after the season ended. I did say that USD was going to get this win, and I'm feeling better about that prediction. Only in the sense of there's always one FCS over FBS win. It feels like every offseason, kind of like March Madness. Somebody's got to jump up and get it. But, with it, it really comes down to momentum and the turnovers on that. I think the prediction I put in my podcast was 21-17 is where I think USD can get it at if everything goes correctly.
Yeah, and I think I'm more like a 31-10, 31-13, somewhere in that range. I do think there's absolutely a scenario where South Dakota, through their running game, veteran offensive line, literally the same storylines that kept Western Michigan close. Kind of a carbon copy of that. I do think there's a scenario where they could keep it close. I'm hopeful week 2 for the Badgers, they come out a little more crisp, a little more aggressive, and maybe a few more chunk plays. And then once that happens, I think there is a possibility you kind of take some of that running game from South Dakota out of the mix, and then it becomes a little more difficult.
Now, the one question I have for you, where's Wisconsin as the coaching staff, the football players, where are their heads at right now with who's coming to visit next week?
Yeah, no, listen, that's a great point, right? Next week, you got Bama coming into town early. I would say this, I think it helps that week 1 wasn't great for them.
Yep.
If they had come out it's a really good point, because this is a great look ahead opportunity you have an FCS school coming in, and even a great FCS school. It's an easy thing to overlook as a D1 player. With Bama coming next week, but I think week 1 was just kind of lackluster. I guarantee you the film room is not going to be like the coziest film room this week for Wisconsin. I know they've heard some noise on social media about Badger fans being a little restless. Heck, we talked about it on this show.
Yep.
I think that game being close against Western Michigan is not a good thing potentially for South Dakota.
Yeah. I was hoping you guys would blow them out. So then you can feel you don't want to try something new against USC. Then at that point, you want to keep it simple. But yeah, that's where I kind of get my good feeling about the game is just them overlooking USC for Alabama. I don't care what program you are, FBS level. That's such a big time game. And the fact that you guys pulled Alabama out of their own state for a game, and some offsite game in Georgia to give them still a home field crowd, it's awesome. I'm really excited for you guys on that game.
No, it's a hell of a point you brought up. Winning Gambler he said something similar. I think Dakota had a much better shot before Wisconsin struggled last week. Again, we don't really know who Wisconsin is yet either, but if Wisconsin is a team that has some of the metal we hope it does, struggling a little bit in week 1 is going to light a bit of a fire under the butts, I think. Couple more questions here. Pavel says 28-14 with no deep shots again. So he is a bit of a close game as well.
Yep.
So I'm looking forward to it, man. Definitely appreciate you coming on the show. Definitely we'll keep in contact, man.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it. And for all the South Dakota fans who are coming in, man, I hope they have an incredible time. Like I said earlier, there's nothing like Madison in the fall. So
Oh yeah.
unfortunately you couldn't make this one, but looking forward to a good one. Other than that, man, football's this weekend. Let's get it. Let's have fun.
Let's have some fun. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, Ryan. It's really cool to get an opportunity to see what a big time podcast can do. Hoping to get mine up to the same level as what you guys have.
Well, I don't know if I qualify for that. You should find a different one if that's what you're looking for.
You know what? You got the blue check mark on Twitter, so you're doing pretty good for yourself on that. But
I paid $5 for that though. They didn't give me that.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm excited. It's really cool. It's a great opportunity. I am gonna joke that USD filled the stadium that you guys have, since we're walking in red and white as well. So it's gonna be fun. I hope USD fans get a chance to meet a lot of Wisconsin fans, make some new friends at this.
Hell yeah, man. I love it. He is Jake Conover, covers University of South Dakota. Really good guy. Had a lot of fun talking on his podcast as well. So for everyone listening, thank you so much. Appreciate you tuning in on Wisconsin, and we will talk tomorrow. A couple really good shows coming up. We got Coach Anderson coming on to break down week 1. We just recorded that one. So a bunch of stuff coming up on Wisconsin, and we will talk later. And this is where it should end quickly, Jake, but my shows have a tendency of just not ending. So it's still, I think, live, and people just make fun of me.